as good as a guy that can shadow somebody running down the field. So I'm not really sure who holds more value or which one would be harder to replace. I guess some of it depends on what's coming up in the draft, what's coming up in free agency, and I haven't looked at all that enough to know.
My friend John Hedges from Fixology Repair is fixing 2 of my tablets right now, helped me transfer some files. He helped me do a lot of stuff I couldn't do on my own. They repair tablets, they repair watches, they sell accessories and watches, really some nice high-end stuff that you'll want as Christmas presents, stocking stuffers. So check out fixologyrepair.com. Check out Fixology Repair, 3rd floor of the Mall of America by Nordstrom's, or the store downtown that I was just visiting in the Skyway, just south of the Wells Fargo Center.
There are some things in life that you just can't live without. Now, whether it's a special piece of jewelry, a watch, or even your smartphone, you want it in working condition. At Fixology Repair, we are committed to restoring your pieces so that everything works or fits the way it ought to. Watch servicing, chain repair, and broken screen replacements are just a few of the services that we offer at Mall of America. Please visit us at fixologyrepair.com or at fixologymn on Twitter to learn more. Mention this ad and get a 10% discount on our services.
Anthony Harris keeps playing well, and the thing I've always said about Anthony Harris is he might not be the best athlete, he might not have the highest ceiling, but every time they play him, he does something well.
He should be their starter next year.
He should be their starter,
opposite
no doubt.
Harrison Smith. I mean, to me, he's proved it over this season that they can trust him, that he is more consistent. And, he's also been one of those guys where offenses have focused on Harrison Smith being one of the blitzers, while Mike Zimmer talked about Mackenzie Alexander is usually opposite of Harrison Smith, and that's why he can have some free runners. Well, Anthony Harris can kind of be in that role too. I think he's a reliable, low-cost option for them, and they need more of those players as they pay more of their high-end players. So, I mean, with Sendejo being hurt all year, having a big salary next year and kind of on an option year basically for the team, I don't think Sendejo's coming back at the salary that he's currently slated, and I don't think he's coming back at all.
I agree with you completely.
Because I think he would have too much pride to take a backup role or backup salary, and it'll be interesting for me to see what is the market out there for Sendejo. How much do other teams value him versus the Vikings? Maybe he goes out in free agency and finds out that there isn't much of a market, and he comes back on a low paying scale. So that one's going to be interesting. But either way, whether Sendejo's back or not, I think Anthony Harris has outplayed him.
Agreed. Zimmer did take the blame for the 75-yard touchdown run.
It was interesting that he's very quick to praise his defense and sometimes criticize the offense, and some of that has to do with how those different units have been playing this year. But I thought it was interesting that he said, "Yeah, hey, I made a bad call on that one." And when you look at it, maybe, I don't know. I mean, it was also some players maybe getting pushed around a little bit too much. I think Sheldon Richardson was taking on a double team but couldn't necessarily stand his ground there. It created a first seam. I think there was a linebacker that was a little late trying to get there, and I don't remember which one it was. And after that, there was your seam, and nobody could catch him. So I think it is one of those things where, if you get in a game and you're gambling a bunch, you are going to get burned on occasion. And so I don't chalk up, too much, or I don't put too much into that one play. However, there has been a little bit more of a trend of offenses being able to run on the Vikings a little bit more. And it wasn't just that 75-yard run. There were a few times where you thought, maybe the Dolphins are getting something going, but because of the score, they couldn't really stay with it.
Right. I thought the two unsung heroes of the game were David Morgan and his blocking, and Marcus Sherrills. The big punt return right when it felt like the Dolphins might be back in the game.
It was definitely a game changer. And for once, we had Kirk Cousins taking on some responsibility, or at least the offense saying, we played bad that series. They put us in great position. They couldn't do anything. I think they got like 4 yards and 3 downs and had to kick the field goal. But I thought it was really interesting that Zimmer said he challenged Sherrills to be more aggressive, which I think that that's the right move because Marcus is so good with his decisions, but I do think he kind of can border toward the conservative side, calling a fair catch when maybe there was the chance to do that. But I'll tell you what, being a punt returner in the NFL is about the most dangerous, scary job I could imagine.
Absolutely.
Players flying down, and you're supposed to, mostly be looking up at the ball and instead of figuring out when to call a fair catch or not. And frankly, that long return, I thought probably best to just let that thing bounce into the end zone. But he may not have known how far back he was because he fielded it just inside the 10 and he was running backwards. So he might not have known that. But also I think is a credit to some of the blockers for him. There were a couple times where guys had a chance to block a guy in the back and backed off of that and just shielded him.
A couple guys came close, and they did a nice job of not only not committing the foul, but letting the ref see that they weren't committing the foul.
Just kind of throwing their arms up almost like a basketball screen instead of actually making contact. And, I mean, you look at it, man, there are so many penalties that occur on special teams that you think, how can the players keep doing that and keep, shoving somebody in the back or going out of bounds on their own? Finally, we had some smart players that realized, this is definitely going to get called if I do it. Just screen them off. And so I think you got to give a lot of credit to them. And Sherrills is just so good at picking his lanes and kind of a little jitterbug worm, just finding his opening and getting through things and making the play. Now, he didn't have he just doesn't. He's not that deep speed guy who's going to blow people off the field. But he was so close to getting to the end zone on that one, just getting tripped up from behind.
Absolutely. When we recommend our sponsors, I want you to know that we actually do participate with our sponsors. I spend my money with our sponsors. Tony Hoagland, your State Farm agent in Champlin, handles my insurance, handles Michael Russo's insurance. He should handle your insurance too. He works out of Champlin, but you can reach him in a million ways. You can use the app. You can call him. Very responsive office. Check out Tony Hoagland, Hoaglund.
Hey, Minnesota sports fans. This is your local State Farm agent, Tony Hoagland. I need you all to ask yourselves this question. If you're in an at-fault car accident and you are sued for $700,000, how much of that $700,000 will my current insurance company pay? If you are unsure or can't answer all $700,000, you need to give us a call. State Farm has been number one in car insurance since World War II and number one in homeowners insurance since 1964. For a no-obligation review of your current policies, call us at 763-421-4900 or check out our website at www.champlininsurance.com.
All right, let's get to the Pro Bowl and playoff percentages. What did you think of the Pro Bowl selections from this team?
I thought it was about right.
Me too.
Thielen definitely deserved it. Hunter definitely deserved it. Smith has the name, has been playing well. He deserved it. Barr, I think his late surge helped.
Oh, yeah.
But after a few weeks off, I thought, okay, he hasn't played in a while. Maybe not going to get there, at least as an original Pro Bowler. To me, I think the biggest surprise, I think a lot of people look at Stephon Diggs and say maybe that was a surprise, but there are so many good receivers and running backs in this league. To me, the bigger surprise was Xavier Rhodes not making it. And I talked to him today, and he said, "Nah, no big deal."
Do you think he had a Pro Bowl season?
I don't think he's been thrown at enough to be considered a Pro Bowler because a lot of those, are based off of how many passes are you knocking away, how many interceptions do you have. And, if I had to say the times he was thrown at, did he look like a Pro Bowler? Probably not quite at that level.
I just don't think it's been he's a good player. I don't think he's had one of his better seasons. And here's the other thing. If you want to have like 6 people in the Pro Bowl, win more games.
Well, yeah, and that's a lot of how it works. I mean, mostly the successful teams are there. Last year, the Vikings had 6 Pro Bowlers. So, I really think that this vote was pretty good for, honestly, for once. Usually,
I know, it was very logical.
Usually there are so many players, at least for the Vikings. I haven't really sat down and looked at all the Pro Bowlers around there because it just doesn't mean a lot to me. But, usually you see a lot of players that are reputation votes. and I hate that because I want the guys that are doing it now to be the ones that get the honor. But who knows what'll happen once players start dropping out of the Pro Bowl and replacements get made.
I think you're going to be in the Pro Bowl by the time.
Yeah, probably punter.
Sure, a long snapper. I think you're a long snap type. So Sid goes up to the Wilfs and gets a vote of confidence for Zimmer and Spielman. And listen, if you don't know how Sid works, the way Sid works is he walks up and says, "You're not going to fire these guys, are you?" And they go, "Of course not. We're going to fire them. Not in the next 5 minutes." Sid, "Okay." And then he writes, "Vote of confidence." So, listen, the Wilfs have been very patient. I think they like Spielman. I think they like Zimmer. I don't think they're eager to make any firings here. We just don't know. What if this team lays an egg for 3 straight weeks? I mean, we just don't know what's going to happen yet.
Yeah, I mean, if they had lost that Miami game and now all of a sudden their playoff hopes are dwindling, then I think maybe it's a better question for them. But they're also probably not in the locker room after that game, standing around waiting for people.
Exactly.
They are probably like a lot of owners, very emotional, very obviously invested, tied into the team, cheering for them. To go up and ask them, how do you feel about, are you going to fire the guys? After a 41-17 win, they're not going to say anything different than, yep, they got our confidence. So, and I also agree with you. They are very patient, and I don't think if the Vikings, say, had finished, a half game out of the playoffs, which, it's still a possibility, but if that happens or if it would have happened, I still don't quite think they would have made a move there. I think that, they were close enough. They showed some signs. If they get blown off the field by, Miami or Chicago or Detroit in these last games, then maybe they look at it and say, hey, the players aren't following these guys. But I just don't think the Wilfs are involved enough in the football aspect of it to feel great about, here's a guy that we would target if we're going to replace either Spielman or Zimmer. And so therefore, I think they would lean toward the conservative approach of these guys will get it figured out. And so I think they probably would have gotten another year either way, which, I'm kind of on the fence with that. If they wouldn't have made the playoffs, do you fire them or do you not?
But what if they make the playoffs, they get blown out in a playoff game, and you're looking at one playoff victory since 2009 for a franchise that has done everything it thinks it can to win a Super Bowl? That's the tough part.
Yeah, well, to me, the biggest issue is they've had this going into this season, they were considered Super Bowl contenders with the caveat that offensive line is their weakness, and they really haven't addressed that, significantly or adequately. So, if you are going to fire one of those two, do you fire the defensive coach who has drafted defense all along, or do you fire the general manager that hasn't addressed the offense? To me, it's kind of like who do you fire in that instance? So, I think you give them one more year and say you are going to fix this offensive line. And if you can't, then you're not going to be around. And considering that I think both of them have one more year on their contract, I think that, it's going to be interesting to see how they address the contract extension, however. No GM or owner or head coach wants to go into a year as a lame duck year. So do they just give them one more year on their contract, or do they give them the typical 2-year contract?
That's the difficult part. And listen, we'll be talking about this over the next few weeks. Let's wrap up the show with our picks. Vikings at Detroit Lions. What do you got?
The Vikings haven't always played great in Detroit, but that team right now is so decimated with injuries. No Kerryon Johnson, no Marvin Jones. They traded Golden Tate. This is one where I think that the Vikings should win handily. I think it's in their best interest to take another lead early and just ride that sucker out. I think if you give the Lions some hope that they can stick around, maybe they would be able to do that. But ultimately, when you look at the talent, I think it's going to be a little bit of a struggle for the offense against the Lions. Their defense isn't terrible. But offensively, I don't think the Lions can put up a lot of points against the Vikings. I mean, I think like 13 is about the right amount of points that the Lions could score, and I think